Hello and welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos. We will be continuing our coverage of the Richard Allen trial there in Delphi. Richard Allen is accused of killing Abby and Libby February 13th of 2017. A few things I'd like to point out. As mentioned here by Bob Segal. Bob posted to his Twitter here, marked it as his recap number 6. Defense attorney Jen Auger asked why the state looked only at male suspects and if hairs found at the crime scene could be tested more. Baznovsky said yes, they could, but a decision was made not to test them at this time. Auger responded, but this is the time. Richard Allen is now on trial. So I just wanted to point out the fact that it looks like there will be some more hair that hasn't been tested or compared to Richard Allen. So I think that's something that we can expect in the upcoming weeks. Also, the defense filed a motion for transport of IDOC inmate by the name of Jesse L. James. It says here, the jury trial in this case commenced on October 14th, 2024. The defense intends to call inmate Jesse L. James as a witness in this case Friday, no sooner than November 1st, 2024 at 9 a.m. However, due to the volume of witnesses and due to the fact that the defense will not be able to present its evidence until the state has completed presenting its own evidence, it is somewhat unpredictable as to when inmate James will be needed in the courtroom. The defense requests that His Honorable Court issue an order directing the Carroll County Sheriff to retrieve inmate James from his respective IDOC location facility on or before November 1st. Attorney Rosie has communicated with Deputy Attorney General Aaron Ridlin, who represents the Indiana Department of Corrections, and confirmed that the IDOC requires a 24-hour notice prior to any inmate being retrieved from the Department of Correction and transported to the Carroll County Courthouse. And therefore, Defendant Allen requests that said transport order articulate the circumstances referenced above so as to provide some flexibility to the defense, the Carroll County Sheriff, and the Department of Corrections in transporting said inmate in a manner that is most efficient and cost-effective under the circumstances. Signed, Bradley A. Rosie. So who is Jesse James? Here's a mugshot. If you look up his IDOC number, here's the information you get. IDOC number 271835. Jesse, middle name L, last name James. Date of birth 1989. Putnamville Correctional Facility, earliest possible release date November 17th of 2024. Date of sentence January of 2021 for sexual misconduct with a minor. Felony 4. County of conviction Elkhart. And here again the release date November of 2024. I did find a short article about Jesse James. It says here, an Elkhart man is jailed after police said he was caught molesting a child Tuesday night. Jesse James, 30, was arrested by Elkhart police and faces felony counts of child exploitation. He allegedly touched a teenager inappropriately at a home as they played video games in the 1900 block of Oslo Road around 10 p.m., according to the details police provided in the probable cause affidavit in the case. A witness told police James was seen through a bedroom window touching the juvenile, the affidavit shows. Police took James into custody and he admitted the allegations during questioning, the affidavit says. Police said James also admitted to other sexual encounters with the juvenile earlier this year. Formal charges are expected to be filed in Elkhart County Superior Court 3, court information shows. I also pulled up his information here on the Indiana My Case lookup. So it looks like the case was open March 25th of 2020. Same date it was filed. 3 counts of sexual misconduct. So that's all I can dig up on this Jesse James guy. I'm not sure how he fits into all of this. Maybe at one point he was locked up with Richard Allen or somebody that's going to be testifying. If you have any more information, leave me a comment about this gentleman. All right, let's get into wishtv.com's live blog. They've been doing the best coverage. We're going to read directly from that. Wish TV live blog, day 9. 9 a.m. Court begins for Monday session. News 8's Kyla Russell is back in Delphi for continuing coverage of the double murder trial of Richard Allen. Court began at 9:01 a.m. Judge Gall says the jury had family time on Saturday and had access to their devices. At 9:07 a.m., prosecution attorney James Luttrell began direct examination of ISB forensic scientist Stacy Bosnofsky. Bosnofsky specializes in paternity or kinship analysis. Bosnofsky tells the jury the ISP lab is a nationally accredited team of experts. She describes the lab's testing and quality assurance processes. She described DNA to the jury, how it functions, and where it can be found in bodily fluids. Bosnofsky tells the jury that DNA can also be found in hair and skin cells, but that it is most rich in blood and saliva. She says that DNA cannot be tested to see when it was deposited. She describes to the jury the steps involved in testing for DNA and describes single-source DNA and mixture DNA. She describes a report she made in March of 2017 and her testing of 2 Indiana sexual assault evidence kits. Bosnofsky tells the jury the details of how the kits were performed on both Libby and Abby. She tells the jury there was no seminal fluid detected and that the kits mostly excluded male nDNA, with the exception of 1 set of swabs and a fingernail scraping kit from each girl. She told the jury the kit suggested a presence of male DNA, but was insufficient for further analysis. She concluded that there was no male DNA or there was insufficient male DNA for further analysis. Bosnofsky tells the jury that at the time there were no performing confirmation tests and that it was a choice to preserve DNA material. Further results of DNA testing on cervical swabs on the girls showed no male DNA evidence. She told the jury that the amounts of DNA detected wasn't necessarily unusual. She says hands and fingernails and everyday contact with things like laundry and sharing the household items can sometimes show DNA under testing. Bosnofsky told the jury that genital swabs showed a very small amount of DNA and that she wouldn't be surprised if the DNA came from clothing or previous contact. Bosnofsky described the testing of several other swabs introduced into evidence, several from Abby and Libby and some from trees. In all cases, she said 0 or small amounts of male DNA was found. At 11:10 a.m., court is back in session. Stacy Bosnofsky, a DNA expert for the Indiana State Police, is on the stand. Bosnofsky is looking at exhibits and describing what is seen. She is looking at 3 exhibits: a pink shirt, a gray bra, and a black bra. Bosnofsky points out blood on the pink shirt and tells the jury that the gray bra and the black bra have possible blood on them. She tells the jury that there were 2 strands of hair on the shirt. One was from Abby, and the other strand did not have enough DNA to identify. The gray bra also did not have enough DNA to be conclusive. Bosnofsky tells the jury the black bra had 4 strands of hair and none of them had enough DNA to be conclusive. The prosecution shows Bosnofsky a black Nike shoe that was found under Abby's back. She tells the jury there is hair on the shoe, which could be from an animal. She tells the jury the blood on the shoe was partially Abby's, but the rest of the blood needed more analysis. The prosecution shows the jury blood swabs from around the area where the bodies were found, specifically from the ground and tree. 5 of the swabs were Libby's blood from the ground, and 2 were from Abby. More swabs were shown to the jury that had blood from Libby's index finger and pinky. The state shows the jury more clothing, including a sweatshirt, 2 socks, a green headscarf, a tank top shirt, the other black Nike shoe, a pair of jeans, and a tie-dyed shirt, all recovered from the creek. Bozanowski tells the jury the items from the creek impacted her analysis because the samples had degraded and DNA was partially removed. She tells the jury the Nike shoe was heavily soiled but contained no blood or seminal fluid. Only 1 swab had DNA, and it was determined to be Abby's. The pair of jeans from the creek had 2 swabs done, found to be mostly Abby's DNA and a small amount of Libby's DNA on it. Bozanowski tells the jury the tie-dyed shirt from the creek had many mud stains, but no blood or seminal fluid. It had 1 hair strand on it, but it did not have enough DNA on it to determine its source. She said the sweatshirt from the creek was cleaner than the other items in the creek, but no blood or seminal fluid was on it, so DNA could not be determined. On the pair of underwear found in the creek, she tells the jury there was no blood or seminal fluid found. Bozanowski told the jury that she took swabs from the crotch area. Those swabs showed Abby's DNA. She tells the jury the underwear were stained, but not by blood. Bozanowski tells the jury that the black sock from the creek had no blood or seminal fluid, and she could not determine who the sock belonged to. Bozanowski tells the jury that the pink sock found in the creek also had no blood or seminal fluid on it and had 3 hair strands on it, but she could not determine who they belonged to. She told the jury that the green scar from the creek may not have been related to the timing of the crime. She says there is no DNA on it. Bozanowski tells the jury the tank top had no blood or seminal fluid. A swab was taken but could not determine DNA from a partial profile. The prosecution references an April 11, 2017 DNA report that re-evaluated the black hooded sweatshirt and a swab from the iPhone. The jury is told the swab from the iPhone showed no blood and they could not make conclusions from the DNA. Bozanowski tells the jury that 22 swabs were taken of the hooded sweatshirt, trying to avoid the blood. She says the first swab was consistent with an unknown male. Later tests showed that DNA came from a person who worked in the forensic lab.
Are you back at Lafayette?
The other swabs on the hooded sweatshirt showed DNA mostly from Libby and Abby. Bozanowski told the jury, I found more DNA on the sweatshirt, but that she could not determine the profile. She says laundry mixes DNA profiles. The prosecution asked Bozanowski about the July 11, 2017 report on swabs from tree branches. She tells the jury these were done at the ISP post in Lafayette, Indiana. She says she converted a conference room into an exam room there. She tells the jury she examined branches for blood and skin cells and took several swabs and did lab testing at her main office. Bozanowski said she found most of the branches did not have conclusive DNA and that 2 swabs tested positive for Libby's blood profile. Bozanowski told the jury how difficult it was to get swabs and recover DNA from the creek, and says the challenge of testing hair was that it needs to have a skin tag, and the root and the natural shedding doesn't have much of a possibility of DNA testing. She told the jury she did send a sample of human hair to the FBI that consisted of 72 hairs. The FBI told Bozanowski that 3 of the hairs were not consistent with Abby or Libby. She told the jury she chose not to test using rootless hair testing as there was not enough hairs to even send and there was a low success rate for the testing. Bozanowski tells the jury that the momentary moment of touch does not necessarily mean there is touch DNA. That touching evidence is more limited contact, while handling evidence leads to more contact. She says blood is always going to be a better source of DNA than touch DNA. The prosecution asked Bozanowski, did you find the DNA of Richard Allen on the DNA sample submitted to you? She replied no. she said, did not even create a male profile for any of the DNA. Gold tells the gallery says she has noticed members of the gallery sleeping in the room and says she would appreciate it if people stopped. Court returned for the afternoon session at 1:38 p.m. and began with defense attorney Jennifer Auger cross-examining Stacy Bozanovsky, a DNA expert for the Indiana State Police. According to News 8's Kyla Russell, Auger began by asking Bozanovsky to explain what technology extracts DNA from hair strands without a root. Auger and Bozanovsky spoke back and forth about the tech, which the expert said is being expanded and still not in full force. It's only being used for unidentified human remains, Bozanovsky said. Auger asked about strands of hair being held at Bozanovsky's lab that have not been tested yet, and asserted that the testing should happen now, as Richard Allen is on trial and this is potential evidence. Auger also asked if any hair samples from Allen have been submitted. The expert said no. The two go back and forth about hair found in Abby Williams' hand, and hair samples from Libby German's sister and grandmother were only tested recently, with Auger mentioning the number of years that have passed since the murders. Bozanovsky later said the lab did not develop a DNA profile from an unknown male based on rape kits, despite mentioning they had reason to believe from the case information that was provided that it was a male perpetrator. This means that Richard Allen is included in the profile. Bozanovsky said, regarding the samples, the majority of results can't determine the amount of people contributing to DNA on the items. Auger then questioned the contamination standards, referring to a black hoodie that was contaminated by a male. The expert said she had no male assistants and no one except from her touched it during her autopsy. She said she reviewed DNA from the items belonging to Richard Allen and said she did not find any connection between Allen and the two girls. She also said there was not enough DNA on the unspent cartridge or magic bullet found at the scene to develop a DNA profile for anyone. Following a few questions from prosecution and defense, the jury chimed in with questions about protocol was in place at the lab and how evidence is stored. Bozanovsky finished testifying just before 2:50 p.m. Following testimony from a DNA expert with the Indiana State Police, the state called Major Pat Cicero to the stand. Cicero is a LaPorte County Sheriff Major with previous experience as a crime scene investigator. Cicero said his specialty while as a CSI was bloodstains. Cicero explained to the jury how bloodstains worked and how investigators look at stain shape to pull information about the case. He also explained how CSIs reconstruct scenes. Cicero was asked to assist with the Delphi murders until February 12th of 2024. He didn't visit the scene until April 4th. The state shared a number of exhibits which showed stains found at the scenes and diagrams of where the bodies were found. He pointed out a blood stain on a tree, explaining that it was a transfer stain. Transfer stains are left behind when a bloodied object comes in contact with another. After showing the jury the stains and explaining how CSIs use chemicals to make blood stains stand out, Cicero said all of the stains found at the scene were transfer stains. Cicero then explained the blood stains found on Libby German's body, including a transfer stain on her foot, lightened blood on her face, and blood found on her thighs. Cicero said due to the altered blood patterns, he believes at one point Libby was sat upright, but then moved after dying. He also added that blood found on the tree belonged to Libby. He said he did not believe Abby Williams was moved after injury. Williams did not have blood on her hands, which Cicero said could have been due to her possibly being restrained or unconscious. Court resumed at 4:30 p.m. following a quick recess. Pat Cicero, a LaPorte County Sheriff's Major with CSI experience, returned to the stand. State Prosecutor James Luttrell began by questioning Cicero about his conclusions about the crime scene and the specific details about the bodies. Cicero told the jury he believed Abby Williams was killed while wearing the clothes she was found in. and said he wasn't surprised that investigators didn't predation on the bodies given the climate and temperature on February 13, 2017. He added that he believed at least one person killed the girls, but couldn't rule out that more may have been involved. Defense attorney Jennifer Auger asked Cicero about his conclusions on blood found at the scene, asking him to explain how the blood could have transferred to where it did. Auger asked if the girls could have been lifted, and Cicero said not necessarily, including that her body could have been turned. He mentioned in earlier testimony that Libby's body may have been moved or dragged after her death. He confirmed to the court, though, that at some point Libby German's neck was above her head. Auger noted that it would have been highly appropriate to document any drag marks found at the scene in February of 2017. Auger asked Cicero if in all of the photographic evidence he reviewed, could anything link Richard Allen to the murders of Libby and Abby? Cicero said no. Luttrell redirected, to which Cicero explained his theory that Libby's arm could have been used to pull her body, and that if she was dragged, her head would fall back. Luttrell then asked if sexual assault could occur without leaving DNA, and if Libby's injuries were inflicted at the same time. Cicero said yes to the first question and said the injuries would have been inflicted at different times. Auger jumped in, remarking that Cicero had no idea how the blood transfer got on that tree. No, Cicero said. Could there have been other methods? Yes. You can't rule out that Abby and Libby were killed at the same time, Auger asked. No, I can't, Cicero concluded. Live blog, Day 10. Court began at 9:02 a.m. News 8's Kyla Russell reports Allen is wearing a light purple button-down shirt with khaki pants. She reports he seems to have lost even more weight. The state enters into evidence 2 video interviews with Allen from October 13th and 26th of 2022. Judge Gall tells the jury that parts are redacted as they do not pertain to the investigation. The judge allows both videos, one with Mullins and Leggett and other with Holman. At 9:14, the jury enters the courtroom and the video is on the screen. Judge Gall says the jury was able to have supervised use of their phones last night and were able to look at work emails. The state plays the October 13 video first. Mullen and Leggett explain in the way why they are talking to Allen. They read him his rights and tell him he can leave at any time. Allen says he understands. In the video, Mullen reads to Allen that he had learned from Doolin's interview with Allen in February of 2017. The 3 men joke about their ages. Allen says, "I'm in the 50 club this year." Allen gives his phone number to Mullins and tells him he has an Android phone. Allen gives his email address. Mullen asks Allen if he uses Facebook, and Allen says, "My wife does, I don't." Allen says in the video that he is married, has a daughter who was born in 1994. He says his daughter is also married. Her husband used to live in the Philippines and Canada. They got married in 2017. Allen says he graduated high school in 1991 and studied accounting at Ivy Tech before joining the military. He says he played football in high school for a year and was not an honors student. Allen says he was in the National Guard and that he lived in Mexico, Indiana, most of his life. He says he does not constantly go to church and has no criminal record. Allen says he had a heart attack in 2010 at the age of 37. He says on the video that he suffers from depression and anxiety. Allen tells investigators in the video that he worked at CVS since 2013 and previously worked at the location in Peru. He says he worked for Walmart for 10 years before that and left because he was tired of the bureaucracy. Mullen brings up February of 2017. Allen says he was at his mom's in Peru while his wife was working and left there at 11:15 a.m. He said he went home, got a jacket, and even though it was warm out. Allen said he walked down to the High Bridge, Went out a little bit on the platform and watched the fish. Alan says then he left. He says he parked either on the bridge side or near a smaller bridge. Leggett shows him a map of the area. Mullen explains where things are on the map. Alan says he didn't go out all that often, but that it varied and that he had gone out a time or two in the winter months. Mullen asked Alan if there were any other way he would have driven to get there. Alan says maybe, but really they always took the same route through downtown. Alan says he was driving downtown a few days after the girls died when the DNR officer called and they agreed to meet at Save-A-Lot. Alan said he thought about it a lot because he was probably there around them. Alan said he told Doolin he saw the girls, he thought one was babysitting two of the girls, and he thought they all looked alike. News 8's Kyla Russell reports at this point in the courtroom, Richard Allen is shaking his head. In the video, Allen said there were two cars at the end of the trail near the entrance, a sedan and an SUV. Allen says he left around 1 to 1:30 to 1:45. Allen says in the video that he worked a Walmart community event near the trails years ago and also worked near the Carlton Bridge on that community service day. Allen says there were no vehicles where he parked on February 13th, 2017. Mullen asked how far out on the bridge he went that day. He said he wasn't sure how many feet it was, but he really never went past the first platform. Leggett asked how and where he walked to get on the bridge. Allen doesn't give a clear answer. Allen explains he had a red Ford car before he got the black car. Mullen again asks about him seeing three girls. Allen says he did not see anyone else while on the trails, and he was walking towards the girls. I don't really remember seeing anyone that day. If I did, they didn't stand out to me. Allen says in the video that he had an individual stock trading account and was trying to get rich. In the video, Allen laughs. Allen says in the video, that was a hobby, I guess for me, referring to the question about stocks. Mullen asked what he was wearing that day. Allen said he was wearing blue jeans and a back-off brand Carhartt jacket. Leggett asked in the video if he was wearing a hat. Allen said that if he was, it would have been a skull cap he kept in his jacket pocket. Allen says he was wearing either tennis shoes or combat boots or work boots. Mullen is seen texting during the interview. Mullen asked Allen about what phone he had in 2017. Allen says he doesn't know, but he's had his current phone for several years. Leggett asked if Allen has a photo of his car and if they can confirm some of his information by searching his home and extracting data from his current phone. They ask if they can do that immediately. Allen asks, how long are you going to have my phone? Leggett asks what service provider he has, and Allen says he uses Ting based off Verizon. Leggett asks what service provider he had in 2017. Allen says they can extract that information from his current phone. Mullen reads another round of Miranda rights as it pertains to cell phone extraction. Allen says in the video, I don't want to be someone else's fall guy. I thought we were talking. I haven't thought about this in a long time. I don't want you guys to get someone from the public so we can close this thing. Allen says, starting to feel like you think I am the main lead here. Leggett says, we decided to pick through this from the very beginning. There's no fall guy. If you think I might have actually done this and you want to get a warrant or something, that's fine, Allen said. Allen agrees to let them look through his current phone and says he will look for the phone he had in 2017. Allen decides not to sign anything until he speaks to his wife. Allen says in the video, am I an angel of a person? No, but I guess I don't want you looking through every website I ever checked. He says he's worried they will find pieces close to fitting and make it fit. I don't think you're coming after me, Alan says. I want closure for the family as much as anyone else. News 8's Kyla Russell reports that Kathy Allen is pretty upset watching this. Allen says in the video that he would not want people going through their home. We're here because we haven't found the guy who did this. I don't want to become that guy. Allen says, there's nothing to tie me. I'm not worried. I had nothing to do with it. If I had anything useful to you, I would give you anything I had. Mullen explains in the video why they want to look at his car. Allen talks about watching Dateline every week with his wife and doesn't want to be that story. Allen says to the investigators, this is out of left field, guys. I'm going to talk to my wife before I do anything. This impacts her more than it impacts me. Mullen and Leggett step out of the room. Allen checks his phone. They return and show him photos of his car going to the trail. Mullen says, we've been able to talk to your wife and daughter. Mullen says his wife and daughter describe Allen's mental health issues. Mullen shows Allen a picture of Bridge Guy. Mullen asks, is this you? Allen says, I was going to shoot myself one night. I don't have psychological issues because I went out and killed 2 girls. News 8's Kyla Russell reports Allen's wife Kathy is crying and sobbing in the courtroom at this portion of the video as this portion of the video plays. Mullen asks in the video, why is this information showing us one thing but you're saying another? Allen says, it feels like he's being interrogated. What info do you have? He asks. You have that. I was out there. I told you that. After a cut in the video, Leggett says, we have people that saw you. Leggett then leaves the room. Allen says, you're trying to change my words around. Mullen asks, the question is this you? Allen replies, no. Mullen says in the video, you were out there to do this to the girls. You were trying to introduce them to someone. Allen continues to deny. Allen says, arrest me or take me home. I'm done. You're not going to find anything that connects me to the murders. You've lost my trust. Now you've pissed me off. You're an expletive. In the video, Allen gets up and leaves. News 8's Kyla Russell says at this point in the courtroom, there is laughter.